so Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts is an interesting one because as of today, which is July 26, 2019, it's really interesting because I saw that the Dunkin' Donuts CEO was actually in talks with the Beyond Meat folks, and I think that's really interesting because as I'm going to go through the options here, what I see happening is that Dunkin' Donuts is great if you're going to a place to get donuts. But the reality is that their menu doesn't really offer something that is a value proposition to a lot of people, to the average customer, that other restaurants don't beat them in. So for example, McDonald's has better tasting breakfast sandwiches than some of the ones that they offer here. And while it may not be as healthy or it may be marginally less healthy, most people will typically go to McDonald's for breakfast overthinking that Dunkin' Donuts might be the one. So I think that as we go through the options, as we hear that they're going to be talking to the Beyond Meat people, just as a little insight to the way that I'm seeing it, as I'm looking at their options, I think that's a perfect strategy in that they're going to open up the market for themselves to bring in people who are vegan, who are vegetarian, and who want some healthier options, even if it's a little bit more processed than would be ideal. Anyway, moving on, that's just a little insight into how I look at it. Option number one, the veggie egg white. This has egg whites in it, which is really high in lean protein. Without all the bad cholesterol that comes from the yolk, and I should say it's without all the cholesterol that comes in the yolk. It's not necessarily all bad cholesterol, but it is really high in cholesterol. So keep that in mind that when you do have eggs, there is that added component with the yolk that is cholesterol. In this case, we just have the egg white, so it's a great source of lean protein. The peppers are really high in antioxidants. They help to maintain eye health, and they reduce the risk of chronic illness. Moving on, the spinach that's in it is really good for helping to maintain your blood glucose levels, as well as lowering the risk of cancer and improving your bone health. The American cheese increases our protein intake, but typically I would recommend against including the cheese. If you're somebody who needs more protein intake, then I would include it just because it gives you a little bit more, but bear in mind that this is really high in saturated fat and sodium, so there is that trade-off there. Also, ask for the multi-grain thin bread so that there's more fiber and healthy grains in the actual bread that's going to be in, that the sandwich is going to be in. I was actually originally going to recommend that you include the oatmeal and just take out the bun entirely and just eat the contents of the sandwich. But I looked at the nutritional facts and what was actually in that multi-grain brown sugar oatmeal, and really it was just a lot of added sugar. So unlike Starbucks, which includes dried fruit in its oatmeal, Dunkin' Donuts has a lot of added sugar in it, so it actually is not the healthy sugars that we want. It's really going to be more hurtful than it is helpful. So just keep that in mind. Not all sugar is made the same. In this case, it's added sugar, so I didn't recommend the oatmeal. Moving on to option number two, this one's I put option number one significantly higher because option number two has a tremendous amount more cholesterol, sodium, and fat in it, almost double in each category, I believe, at least in the fat, and then more than double in the cholesterol, almost 80% cholesterol versus 8% in option number one. But option number two is the turkey sausage on English muffin. That turkey sausage is lower in sodium and saturated fat as well as sugar than regular sausage, so that is a plus. And then the egg is a good protein source, but remember, this is a full egg. This isn't the egg whites, so it's got that yolk, which means it's higher in cholesterol, and probably explains why this is more than 8 times the cholesterol of option number one. And with that, I think that option number one is definitely your ideal choice. Option number two is what you should go to next as the really the second and really the only two viable options, with the second one being significantly less optimal than number one.